Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on conceal carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I'm Dan Sams.
And had a nice little time last week at the handgun challenge there at Evans Gun Range at Fast OC, or put on by Fast OC, I should say, this last week. We didn't have a ton of people there. Like normally they can barely get through 5 stages because there's just so many people and it's only 3 hours. And this one, I don't know, maybe 8 people, 7 people. And so it was like one stage after the next. It was, I was like, crap, dude, I don't know if I brought enough ammo. This is getting expensive, guys. Like, you keep giving us massive shoot counts and it's just going and going and going. But, oh man, I'm telling you, it just felt so good to get back in, and because it's been a while since I've done a competition. So it felt good.
Man.
Felt really
was that
good.
that was the videos you posted last week?
Yeah. That's still my favorite drill. That's the drill where, I mean, you're relatively close to the target. I'd say, 3 feet. No, it's got to be a little bit more than that. Maybe 6 feet. It doesn't feel like much
more than that. It's just judging by the video. You're pretty doggone close.
You're really close. Yeah. So it's more point shooting than anything else.
Yeah.
And it's 6 to the body of the target directly in front of you, 2 to the head on the target to the left of you, mandatory mag change, 4 to the body on that one on the left, and then Mozambique, the target all the way on the right. So it's just fun, right? Because it's just
cool.
Yeah, it's good times.
Awesome. It's good training, good fun right there, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about training, because by the time you get to the third guy, you'd be dead if you didn't. If you weren't dishing out your customer service a little bit more equitably to everybody.
Yes. But from a speed, mag change, like quick draw, like all that's good training. Yeah, obviously you don't want to dump 6 in the first guy, 2 in the head of the second guy, and then reload before the third. That's not how we normally do it.
No, it would not be a wise way to divvy up the customer service you need to apply.
Yeah, customer service. That's right.
Yeah,
good stuff, man. It sounds like a fun time, though.
It was. It was very expensive because of the shoot count and just the cost of ammo. I mean, I long for those days when I would go to the gun show. I buy 10,000 rounds of 9mm for $1,500. I want those days back.
Got a long way to go to get to those days.
We do, unfortunately.
We might not ever get back there, man. Just honest truth. I mean, we might be in an end of the world as we know it scenario before then.
Entirely possible. Possible.
I had kind of a couple of fun things last week as well. Some of it I don't want to talk about too much, just for the sake of maintaining freedom and protection. And I didn't do anything illegal, but had some just good conversations with people who are like-minded. And it was a joy as we talk about everything from guns to, concepts of freedom, to honestly the basis for our freedom being God and him giving us those rights. Just when we connect with new people or deeper with other people who get that, it's just a joyful thing. And it's reminding me that we are absolutely the majority. And it was a good time, man. So similarly had some good fun. Didn't get as much training in other than some mag changes.
Nice.
Doing some practice on that. Man, so it was a good time. So we got to talk about the truckers, man. I'm gonna tell you.
Were you the one that sent me the image of? Someone sent me an image. I think it was you, of Mad Max with the Canadian flag And it's their prime minister, like looking through the blinds, like, oh crap, what's coming?
Yeah. It's awesome. Oh,
So
well,
good.
there's so many good. So it's funny because there's memes that are fun, but this thing, in fact, I listened to an interview on Carpe Fide podcast, which I recommend. Couple of guys were interviewing a guy who has been involved in some of the Canadian freedom movement. And one of the things he was saying is that the best thing that you can do if you're involved in that is get actual footage there. And so he was actually saying normally you want landscape mode, but for this, he's like, do it on portrait mode, because they're just trying to make it sound like, it was like 3 or 4 trucks. They're trying to make it sound like it was hardly anyone doing anything. And it was miles and miles and miles of convoy, not to mention thousands and thousands of people meeting them along the way at the various truck stops. And I
love how they tried to make that illegal.
Yeah. That's Canada for you.
Exactly.
But it was just such a beautiful thing. And so he was talking about, we've got to have video. And fortunately, that's what a lot of people did. They were just getting video that was in portrait mode so that it could be specifically used on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever. Because just the information overwhelm was awesome, despite the media trying to black it out. But really, really cool. Love how they did it. I think I'm kind of proud of them, and I'm like, all right, we're going to need something similar down here, boys. What's going to happen? So
what I find really ironic is it's England and Canada leading the world for freedom, like not the U.S., not the U.S. by far.
Yeah, I know.
England's going, we're giving up on all this crap. Canada, hey, us truckers, we're going to show these people who's boss. And the U.S., sir, how many masks do I need to be wearing today? 5? Okay, sir, I'll put on 5 masks.
Yes.
What the heck happened?
Anthony Fauci happened, for one thing. And I don't know. There's a whole lot of things that are on my mind, but I have a big concern for the mentality related to our freedom in the United States. What's happened over the last however many years is people have equated America with freedom rather than America being free because of the people's taking a stand. And so if you say, well, we're free and voting works, right? Then you're like, well, I must be in the minority because I voted. I guess I better just sit down and eat some potato chips. And we're not paying attention to the fact that, I'm just straight out with it. There's so much evidence of election fraud. So that means voting doesn't work anymore, right? We have that going on. And we also have the thing of like, well, if there's an American flag, it must be free there. And they don't understand that like the flag is a symbol. Even the terminology of America is a symbol. If we don't uphold the principles in practice, and historically, those principles were upheld with something more than merely a voting book. And that's important. So I think some of it is honestly just brainwashing of the American people. I think that's just it. Man, ask the average person, what free association is and what amendment backs it up. Right. What's, ask about illegal searches and seizures. Ask about the Stamp Act and, what catalyzed a lot of the first American Revolution. People don't know. People don't know half of the, flags of the revolution. Like they don't understand basic stuff. And
they don't understand the 10th Amendment.
Don't understand the 10th Amendment.
Which the 10th one to me is the one that is been repealed without officially repealing it, but we clearly 100% do not abide by it at all.
In fact, just the opposite right now.
Exactly. And for those of you who aren't familiar, the 10th is the one that says, hey, if we didn't specifically say it here in the Constitution, then those rights remain with the state and with the people. So that means the FDA, they were not granted this ability in the Constitution. That's illegal.
Yeah.
Almost every federal government or program is illegal under the 10th Amendment. All of their laws are illegal. Like I mean, you could almost, in my opinion, you could say the reverse of that. So if it says it in the Constitution, then the states aren't allowed to do anything, different than what the Constitution says, which would mean all of the gun laws in every state are illegal.
Yeah.
Because the Constitution says, okay, this is what happens with guns. So like California with no NFA items, with you got to have a boat paddle on your AR, like all these crazy rules, all of them unconstitutional. But we forget about the 10th Amendment. We've just said, that was a little bit too much power to the people. We got to take that away without taking it away. Just ignore it.
They just live like it's not there. I mean, like that's just how they function. And you know how they get away with it? We freaking let them.
We let them. 100%.
Right? This is what people need to understand. And I'm going to be really careful that I don't cross any things that put us in the wrong. But the more a tyrant is able to get away with something, the more they're going to keep doing that thing. And those are, when we talk about the Constitution itself, I mean, it's like the boundaries that allow us to play the game. It's the agreed upon, it's agreed upon set of rules. And we have to follow those or we're not a country anymore. Like that's what people need to understand. Like, it's kind of like, well, here's the rules for soccer. Well, if all parties don't agree to live by the rules and then actually live by them, you're not playing soccer anymore, right? If one team says, well, I'm going to pick up the ball and I'm going to run it like a football and knock over the goalie and roll in, we're going to call it a goal. Well, you're not playing soccer anymore. You can get away with it. Maybe there's probably nobody there with a gun to shoot you to stop you from doing that, right? So it just stops being soccer at that point. And similar, if we're not abiding by the Constitution, it just stops being America at that point. And that's stopped a long time ago. But we go on with this like, well, stars and stripes, and it just means freedom, and that's just what it is. We must be free because we're in America. And it's like, no, man, we're not even a country anymore. And I would go back to, I mean, just from a concept of ethics, I would say at some point, if I was a renter and I broke the lease, now the lease is over. Now I can get evicted, we can do whatever, but like the agreement's over. And so that's just something we need to all pay attention to and keep in mind that, I mean, taxation without representation was a key aspect of what fueled the initial revolution. And so if I can't be guaranteed that my votes are accurately being counted and that I'm accurately represented, then I'm not necessarily having it's taxation without representation at some point, right? We need to just consider those possibilities. I'm not saying I'm not citing anything right now. I'm just saying like we should consider that. Yeah. And actually, last thing before I roll on too long on that, but I mean, that is the concept of the 10th Amendment, right? What was happening, people don't understand that, you had these various colonies and whatever that could vote for their own principles, could vote for their own whatever, and they were under the king. But the idea was that you had some form of autonomy. And what became a problem is when British Parliament began levying taxes against the U.S. And so they're like, well, wait a minute, that would be to us the equivalent of California voting a tax that then Ohio has to pay. It's taxation without representation.
Which, by the way, they do.
Exactly.
They go, oh, you moved? Well, we don't believe you moved. Oh, we don't believe you moved soon enough. Or we want proof. You know what? I don't owe you a thing.
Yeah.
I don't owe you. I got a Samuel L. Jackson line going through my head right now.
Yeah.
But I cannot repeat on the podcast. Yeah. But I'm like, oh.
Yeah. You could just say, I don't owe you a snakes on the plane. Yeah. So all of those things are things to be considered. Yeah. And consider how we achieved freedom in the first place. Yeah. Because my concern is there's not enough proactive thinking about how to retain freedom. And I will say, I mean, the Ottawa truckers right now, it's something other than just a statement, right? So, I was actually listening to a guy talking. He's like, we've had protests for a long time where we go out and we're like, we should be free and vax mandates are wrong and da 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 da. And you know what? Like, tyrants just don't care. Like they don't. They're like, oh, and this is the other thing, both to our good and to our bad, a tyrant insulates himself from really understanding what the people want. Right. And so a tyrant will think that he's got all of the people when he doesn't, or he'll just not care.
Or he's not care, or, well, those who oppose me are so small, they're a minority.
Exactly.
And in reality, I think the tyrants are right. Not that they're so small, but they won't do anything. We won't do anything.
So notice, though, the truckers said, we're going to do something. So, and it was brilliant because they actually went and blockaded Ottawa. And now I don't know how many of them are still there, but last I checked, I mean, they were still there today, like 3 days of just blocking out Ottawa. And I'm like, obviously Trudeau cared enough to get out of town. And now he's saying, I have COVID. And he's trying to play the sympathy card. It was something that was more substantive than just holding up signs. Right. And so I know somebody would probably say, what's the difference between that and Black Lives Matter blocking highways? And I'm like, Black Lives Matter would go out and block a highway randomly, right? Get themselves run over at times for this general vague racism is bad. And it's like, okay, we all agree. What is the specific thing that needs to happen? Because honestly, if they were, enslaving people and whatever, and that you could say, we want this thing fixed and we're going to bring attention to it and we're going to block the roads, good or bad, that it's at least something specific, right? The Ottawa truckers are like, take away the mandate. Like, we want to be able to do our job without being forced to take a jab. And it was specific. It was clear.
Which, if you think about it, these are people who are in their trucks by themselves. Why are you making them do anything?
Yeah.
Like, there's literally no reason to make them do anything.
Yeah. Yep. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So which makes you say, like, well, why is this happening? Yeah. And it's not about, you remember when we used to say early on in this thing, like, this is not about the virus. Never has been. It's not about the virus. Would do us well to remember that. I know people now that begrudgingly got the jab, and I don't give people a hard time if they're getting the jab. Like, hey, you do you. Like, I'm not fighting against it, and the whole point is freedom here. But how many of them are like, oh, man, I'm gonna have to get another booster, and they're starting to realize I did everything they wanted, and it doesn't end. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So you have to stop giving them what they want, because what you're essentially doing is rewarding behavior. We teach this in parenting classes, by the way. If you give the toddler what they want when they scream, they're going to scream more to get more things that they want. But if you say, no, man, then they don't get the reward for the behavior. And tyrants have to be treated. Actually, we've joked about this, like tyrants, terrorists, and toddlers are the 3 T's that you do not negotiate with. So, like, just don't give them what they want. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's disheartening to see how quickly we fold, but at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, I don't think we're ready yet to fight for our freedoms back.
Yeah.
And the reality is, at least here in California, I am in the minority. Without a doubt, I am the minority. Someone who believes that these are tyrants. Like, I'm last night, Sundays, we go to, my son and I, we go to In-N-Out for dinner. It's the only fast food I ever have. I usually have it protein style or even a Flying Dutchman or something like that. Right. So anyway, I'm going through the drive-through and I'm looking in my rear view mirror. And who's behind me but a chick? And as soon as we're starting to get up close to the where you pay, she puts her mask on. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You're in your car, easily 6 feet away from this dude. And why are you putting on your mask? Like, wasn't the whole thing you got to be around someone for 15 minutes? Right? You remember that part of it? Like, how long are you planning on paying the dude? This is getting ridiculous, but they've so been conditioned. Oh, I got to put my mask on. Oh, I can't use these cloth masks anymore. I got to use the paper mask, as if the paper masks are any better. It's not the N95. It's just paper.
Yep.
I don't know what it's like out where you live, but here it is absolutely ridiculous. I am usually one of the only people in a store without a mask on.
See, it's pretty close to the opposite here. Other than there's a few like medical facilities where they expect you to wear a mask. Other than that, generally they'll have signs up saying you're supposed to wear masks sometimes, not always. Like, because sometimes there's like a corporate policy where, like whatever, they want everybody wearing a mask, but like we don't have a state mandate or anything like that now, and nobody enforces it. So I'll maybe go into a store and I'll see.
They have a state mandate in Ohio right now?
We don't. No.
Or you don't?
No state mandate. And then what I'm assuming is some stores have like a corporate policy that says to wear masks has no binding of law. And so they're nobody's enforcing it. And so, so you'll go in and you'll have like two people wearing masks. And I'm like, and my thing is, I'm like, you just look like a tool. Like, it's one thing. So I'm like, if you've been exposed and you're at higher risk or what, maybe you've got it. I'm like, then freaking stay home. But if you're fine, don't wear a mask. This is stupid. Like, mask doesn't do much. Like the mask, because people will say, well, I got exposed to such and such and whatever, and I'm wearing a mask out of precaution. I'm like, if you're going to have a precaution, stay home, because your mask doesn't do jack. You're just virtue signaling. So.
Well, I found really interesting. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a video put out by Joe Rogan in response to the whole Spotify, Neil Young.
I wanted to see it.
Joni Mitchell. Yeah. Have you seen the video?
Yeah. I have not seen the video. I want to.
It's great. So to catch everyone up, I'm sure you all have heard it. So Neil Young starts off by going, I want my music pulled off of Spotify because they got Joe Rogan on there and he's putting out misinformation. And then Spotify came back and said, okay, we're pulling your music because, I mean, realistically, Spotify paid $100 million for the Joe Rogan podcast. They are not canceling Joe Rogan and losing $100 million. That will not happen. They're not that stupid.
Not to mention, Neil Young had right around, I want to say it was like 3 million downloads a month. Like, it was substantive. And Joe Rogan was like 6 million. But think about, like, Neil Young has 2.5 minute songs. The amount of times his music has to be downloaded for them to be able to run a commercial in the gap is actually pretty long. So his 3 million is worth not just half of Joe Rogan's 6 million. It's worth, a fraction of that, because, for crying out loud, Joe Rogan is running 4-hour podcasts, man, 3 hours, 4 hours of like marathon things that people listen to. I just listened to the one with Jordan Peterson.
Oh yeah.
It was engaging the entire time. It was genuinely like intellectually stimulating and fun at the same time. I actually wanted to make a note on that. He's worth far more than Neil Young. And I'm like, Neil Young, why are you acting like a fool? Like, you wrote songs about the government murdering people at Kent State. Like, you actually wrote about that. And now you want us to trust the government and silence free speech. That shooting at Kent State happened over a free protest against the Vietnam War. And some National Guardsmen killed some people. You wrote about it. You rightly brought attention to it. And now you've sided with the bad guys. Like, what? Like, you should revoke the rights to your song. Now, here's the other interesting thing. It's a little bit of a daisy chain of info, but back in, I want to say like January 7th or so, he sold like half of his catalog rights. And it's a little bit probably too much of a long-term connection, but technically the old Pfizer CEO works for the oversees an investment fund that owns some of this. And it's like, that's enough of a difference that like he might not have known about that, but it is powerful enough that maybe somebody made a call. So it's one of those, like, I wouldn't immediately assume a conspiracy there, but I would be like, could be. That was interesting. So Can we talk about the Jordan Peterson for Joe Rogan, or do you have a thought?
Well, let me share something real quick with everybody. I'm going to play part of Joe's clip. The whole thing I'm not going to play, but you can find it on Facebook. Just search for Joe Rogan's page. Go check it out. I think it's worth the 10-minute investment.
Let's do it. All right.
But I want to play part of it because I want you to hear what they're complaining about.
To make a video to address some of the controversy that's been going on over the past few days. And first of all, to say thank you to everyone that sent love and support. I truly, truly appreciate it. And it's been very nice to hear from you. I wanted to make this video, first of all, because I think there's a lot of people that have a distorted perception of what I do, maybe based on sound bites or based on headlines of articles that are disparaging. The podcast has been accused of spreading dangerous misinformation, specifically about 2 episodes, a little bit about some other ones, but specifically about 2. One with Dr. Peter McCullough and one with Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, and he is the most published physician in his field in history. Dr. Robert Malone owns 9 patents on the creation of mRNA vaccine technology and is at least partially responsible for the creation of the technology that led to mRNA vaccines.
That right there, I think, is so telling.
Mm-hmm.
What they're complaining about is a cardiologist who's the most published cardiologist in his field. And they're saying he's given out misinformation.
Yeah.
And a guy who's partially responsible for mRNA vaccines and has 9 patents in that field.
Yeah.
Okay, dude, seriously, you got some serious issues if you're saying they're putting out misinformation because they're not agreeing with what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, because when they say trust the science, what they mean is trust the party.
Yeah, really, it is.
I mean, and we saw this in every other socialist / communist country. You had the Nazis, which are socialists, right? The Nazis actually pushed aside certain types of research because they didn't feel like it was Aryan enough, right? So the socialists will always push out the science that doesn't align with them, right? In their views. Similarly, under Stalin, I'm not going to give it the correct title, but head of agriculture was doing quote unquote research on grain that was absolutely ridiculous. Like they were essentially killing off grain with this research that really wasn't getting him anywhere, but it was considered good communist science. And so even though it led to massive famine, it was good science because it was them and nobody else was allowed to talk about it. And we see that everywhere when there is any kind of tyranny, but we've seen it the most in socialist. I shouldn't say the most. We've seen it most recently a lot in socialist oversight countries like our own.
Yeah, I mean, why can't we just discuss these things? Why is it misinformation? Which, I mean, to be fair, that term has really become popular because of Trump coming up with the term fake news. And so, now it's misinformation, it's fake news, and they're going to apply that to everybody they don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and to be fair, Trump was actually speaking truth on that, right? There was so much fake news. And he's like, look, this is fake news. They're totally pointing it out. But that's why, I mean, we really can't trust anything anyone is saying. And, you know, what Joe Rogan goes into is he goes, look, I'm a layman. I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of these things. I just want the best people in their field. And I want to talk to them. And I want to hear what they have to say. And, you know, maybe that'll help me form my own opinions. And I'm like, that's not bad. And he goes, you know, here's what I could do different. He goes, I probably wait too long in between episodes before I have someone else with a different opinion on it. And he names a few people who have different opinions that he's had on his show. Doctors who are like, you know, all for the vaccine, all for this, that, and the next. And he's like, you know, I probably waited too long in between. I need to, you know, maybe right after I do one, I do another one.
But being honest there, that's not really something he did wrong.
No,
he's trying to
just
throw
saying
a bone.
This is how I could help.
He's trying to throw a bone to say, like, here's how I could help. But like, the fact is, he's had experts from both sides, more than one from both sides. And I mean, talk about he's being fair. I mean, if anything, maybe he does give some misinformation from the other side, right? But he's interviewing.
Well, here's the other thing too, is I'm betting that these guys like Neil Young have not heard any of these episodes.
Yeah.
Because I've never listened to one of Joe Rogan's episodes and been like, I really feel like he's just laying down for, whoever his author is. I mean, he'll challenge him if he doesn't agree with them.
The Jordan Peterson episode is a great example where, like, multiple times Peterson said something and he's like, wait a minute, let's look that up. Like that is that really right? And like, it's interesting because it's a respectful kind of pushing that he does. It makes him a good interviewer. And what was interesting is on one of these things, Peterson had cited a study, and he inadvertently flipped the numbers. Like he had the right numbers, but he inadvertently, as he spoke, said the wrong one for one thing. And actually, when they read the information, it was both exonerating and clarifying. It was like, oh, this is what it was. And so it's like, well, yeah, there's backup for that. Way to go. But you said it wrong. And so it was interesting. Like he's one of the best interviewers we've got right now.
Yeah.
He's fair. He's kind. He's engaging. He reads ahead of time. By the way, I would highly recommend go and check out the Jordan Peterson episode. It was good.
Which one? Because he's been on more than once, I'm pretty sure.
The most recent one. I mean, I think they recorded it like last week, the week before last. I think it got posted last week. If you're watching the YouTube or whatever, because I don't know if they even have them on YouTube, but if you're watching clips from it, it's the one where Peterson is wearing a tuxedo. Really, really good. Have
you seen the episode where Peterson's on it and he's talking about the carnivore diet?
He talked about it a little bit on this.
Did he?
Yeah.
Because he's got a lot of medical conditions, him and his daughter, mental health, medical conditions, and the carnivore diet has completely changed their lives.
Yeah. He was really bright. He actually was very careful in the show. He's like, this is not my field. I'm not recommending this diet for everyone, but he's like, he pretty much said that, yeah, it's changed the game for my daughter and I.
Yeah.
And really, really interesting. There's so many things. He even gets into a lot of things related to Christianity that really, really well done, where I'm like, you're getting close, man. You're really, really close. He affirms some epistemological things that like I teach as a theology professor about the Bible being the basis for Western knowledge, and really, I would say all knowledge, but Western knowledge was what he was saying. And he made an excellent case. And I'm like, this is what we teach. This is really, really good. And he's like, yeah, I'm just observing this. Like, this is without the Bible, we don't have a framework to function from an epistemological perspective. And we're all like, yeah, well, the Doug Wilson's quote related to that was, you are not far from the kingdom of God.
Well, there is some that would say he is a Christian. I would say I'd say he's a typical thinker Christian who believes, but yet struggles because he is so smart and he's got to constantly think things through.
This is what's interesting to me, though. He has not made a clear profession of faith. Like he hasn't. He's gotten really emotional and when discussing the atonement, that things that he's been thinking on and weighing on. He talked about going to the museum with the Bible and all that. Like he said some really good things that are very affirming to Christianity, and all from an intellectual perspective. Like, I'm thinking this through. This is profound. This is right. But he hasn't said, guys, Jesus is my Lord. And like, we just haven't heard that. And I'm hoping we hear that soon, unless I've missed it somewhere, but I haven't heard him make that profession. I hope he has. I haven't heard.
I remember I sent Peyton an article where Jordan Peterson was quoted, and he was basically talking about his struggle of, reconciling Christianity with what he knows just in being one of those freaking smarter than smart dudes. Right. And I was like, dude, I got no problem with this. I got no problem with anybody who like questions things. I got a problem with people who question things and then don't try and get the answer.
Yeah.
Like he constantly is trying, what's the answer? Let me dig into this more. There are other people who are just like, it can't be. Let me go on to the next thing.
But he reminds me of C.S. Lewis in his processing, right?
Yeah, because it's that freaking intellectual, right?
Yeah.
That really smart dude's got to go down that path to get there.
And thinking through immense details. Like there are a few things that I would say, I think C.S. Lewis was wrong on, but they were generally things where he was making a passive comment of general observance that he clearly hadn't, like he didn't exegete out his comments, where there's been like 2 or 3 times I've read something by C.S. Lewis and I'm like, well, that was like the first time I've heard him mention something in passing. And I think he's wrong about it, but I'm like, he's acknowledging he hasn't thought that through yet. And I'm like, the things he thinks through, generally I find agreement with.
Right.
And, or I'm convinced by it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Good stuff. Anyway, that's a rabbit trail, but Ottawa truckers, interesting to see what they're doing. And
interesting to see that they got more balls than the US, honestly.
So heard I got to keep it as broad as possible. I heard someone who was involved with that, say that very broadly, was involved with that. And he was so careful with his words, but he's like, we're trying everything here. At what point do we have to move to something else? And it just left a very vague but broad, and a couple of the comments, and this is an interesting, we're not going to have time for this part of the discussion, but what we're seeing in Australia and Canada, admittedly, is more severe than what we're seeing in the US. Maybe not more severe than what you're seeing in California, but generally we're not seeing that type of lockdown with that intensity in states like Ohio, West Virginia, whatever. And so we're not feeling it, even though we are getting treated like crap. We're not feeling the pressure like they are. But interesting, in both Australia and Canada, they don't have guns to do anything about it.
I know. One of the guys on the shooting team that I'm on, I know he's from Canada. So, I'm at this thing last Thursday. And so I asked him, I go, hey, man, you're from Canada, right? He goes, how'd you know? I'm joking with him. I go, because I can tell. I go, how long have you been here? He goes, I've been here since 61. I'm like, all right, so you're a U.S. He goes, yeah, I'm a U.S. citizen. He goes, I'm more of a U.S. than a Canadian. And I go, well, what do you think about all this COVID stuff going on in Canada? And he goes, they have lost their minds. He goes, here's the difference between Canada and the U.S. And he starts to tell me that he's got a friend who just retired as a light colonel from the whatever they call the Canadian military. He said the initials for it, Royal Mounted, whatever. I can't remember, right? Whatever they call it, right? And so his friend was down in Southern California. So they're having, lunch or dinner, whatever it was. And his friend was like, basically saying how crazy America was because we have rights. And he goes, here's the thing. In Canada, no one thinks they have rights because they don't. He goes, they have privileges, and the privileges are granted by the government. So for them to have a right, it doesn't even cross their minds that I have a natural God-given right to X. Mm-hmm. It's I have a privilege because the government says I do. And he goes, it's just a completely different mindset up there. And he goes, that's why he was like, I'm a U.S. citizen. I left there. He goes, it's really cold and it's really hot. He goes, I wanted out of there so quick, and so he left in 61 and came to the U.S. and has been here ever since. Yeah. But I just found that really interesting, that mindset difference.
Notice that if this it's going to come back to Christianity. I know part of that's because of I'm a pastor, but part of it's just because this is the fundamental reality. Either God gives you your rights or they are not rights, right? And so, if somebody is going to be king, and either it's going to be Jesus or it's going to be a tyrant. And if you allow the government to think that they give you your rights and that they're the source of your rights, you're screwed from the beginning. But if the rights are God-given, then not only do I have an innate privilege here, but also I better not give to Caesar what belongs to God. And so I'm the one stewarding these rights that God has given me, and you try to take them away, and I have a God-given duty to protect the rights of myself and others. And anyway, so highly recommend, by the way. This would go into Slaying Leviathan by Glenn Sunshine goes into this a little bit. Anything on theonomy, good stuff on that. I know we're running low on time, Pete, but could I make a fast commercial for some
Absolutely.
things
Go
the
for
Freedom
it.
Nation needs to be listening and doing? I'm noticing that in the freedom movement, I don't know a nicer way to say than we've just got some dudes who are flatly out of shape. And you will be the first to die, or worse, to get someone else killed. If you believe in freedom, start taking care of yourself. Hit the gym. I don't like running. So, and I still do some, cardio, but like hit the gym, like lift some weights, if all you do is a couple of hours a week, get out there, do some stuff, do some push-ups, man. If you want to do push-ups in between, like, I don't know, cue yourself up. If you could get in 50 push-ups a day, doing like 3 times throughout the day, whatever, do what you can, get some workout going. You need to be fit because stuff's going down. It's coming. It's going to happen. You need to be fit when it gets there. So you're an asset rather than a liability. Also, you need to figure out some comms with your buddies. Everybody ought to get some kind of little Beofong radio and figure out what channels you and your buddies are going to be on. You need to be able to do that. Obviously, ammo and food we've talked about. Somebody brought up actually Bravo. Some of you guys mentioned Bravo. Bravo mentioned, he says, you know what? Quinoa is one of the best things that you can store. Quinoa has all the amino acids your body needs. Theoretically, you could live off just quinoa. Rice and beans are good. I store a lot of rice and beans because it's cheap and it's going to last. But man, quinoa, think about some quinoa. Anyway, making sure our guys are thinking about that because I'm afraid that sometimes it's too much fun to talk about freedom. And the work is in the application. The work is in hitting the gym. The work is in sacrificing a little bit so that you can store a little bit more food. The work is in sacrificing a little bit so you can do a little bit more training, get a little bit more ammo. The work is in sitting down and learning like codes and whatever so you can actually be worthwhile on comms when it comes down to it. Get into it. Anyway, that's just realizing the importance of that. And I don't think enough of us are thinking like that. So anyway, that was my commercial.
Awesome, man. No, I agree completely. In fact, I remember back when I was 120 pounds heavier than I am today. I remember I was at one of my training sessions, and I don't remember if it was said at the training session or I heard it on a podcast or I heard someone else say it. But they're like, there's all these guys who'll go out there and they'll train using their firearm, but they won't train their body to get in better shape.
Yeah.
And I remember going, he's got a point there. Like, what does it matter if I'm great at shooting if I'm like too fat to actually move? Like, I better be good at shooting because
Or think about before you had lost all that weight and trimmed down. So 2 things happen. One, you've lost the weight.
Now I had it back, baby.
Way to go. One is like now you're more of an asset than a liability. Second, I would rather be, if Pete gets hit, I would rather be dragging a Pete that is weighing 100 pounds less than 100 pounds more. We did a survival trip a couple of years ago with some buddies, and we had a guy, he was not way overweight. He's just a big dude and just all around just big, taller, like he not way out of shape at all. Not in great shape, but not way out.
By the way, a guy your size, I would love to have to drag around.
yeah, no problem. I'm
on each shoulder. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm $160, man. Actually, maybe we could get one of those, like a plate carrier with like something I could stand, and then I could be double height, shoot from up here.
The toddler
like
plate
take care
carrier.
of the melee on the bottom. I'd have the high ground. It'd be perfect. Yeah. So fun, get in shape, guys. I was going to say, like on that one trip, this guy, and he wasn't way out of shape, but I remember he got winded. He got a little lightheaded and it hit me. We're way out. I don't know that we can drag this guy out. I mean, because it wasn't a big team of us. It was like me and one other guy and another guy that was about 100 pounds soaking wet. And I'm like, we're going to have a rough time getting this guy out of here. This is what we have to do. So anyway, thoughts on that. One last, I shouldn't just keep tagging things on, but one last thing. As the freedom movement grows, we've got more people that are getting involved that know zero, right? And it reminds me of, in Zombieland 2, where he says, you'll be the first to die, but I like your spirit, right? We've got a couple of guys like that. And I want to tell you, I really do like the spirit. And we have had in a lot of times in the gun community, people jump to make fun of basic guns, calling people poors, whatever. Like, and there's too much mocking. Guys, there's a whole movement of people that want to get in because they get that freedom matters and they're taking it seriously. Yeah, they should have taken it seriously 5, 10, 20 years ago. Right. We all get that. We're in agreement on that. But they're taking it seriously now, and they can be an asset if you make them into an asset. So talk to them plainly. Don't tell them they need to buy a $2,000 AR first. Help them build out one of those $700 decent gigs. Help them put an RMR on it and make sure that they've got something they can shoot right now with minimal training. And then talk them into the better build on the next one. Talk to them about fitness. Talk to them about comms. Teach these guys, man, because they're connecting in the freedom movement, and we want to treat them right. So that really is all I have, Pete. Sorry, I just felt like we need.
No problem, man. Give Lake Erie their plug.
Yeah. Oh, so you guys, I am so excited about stuff happening at Lake Erie Arms. Obviously, check out learms.net. Got some fun stuff going on with training. Always got good stuff going on with training. I'm going to highly recommend the AR maintenance class right now, as well as the open hand open hand defense class. And keep on watching because we're building that gun store, man. I got people right now saying like, hey, I need to learn and I need to go. And of course, it's, I think it was 12 degrees this morning. We're not going to go and shoot outside very much when it's 12 degrees. Maybe some, but not very much. And if I'm teaching a new guy, I'm going to need a little bit of time. So everybody's excited about a real indoor range coming in.
Sorry, that reminds me of Red Dawn. All that hate's going to burn you up, son. It keeps me warm.
Yes, I fully agree. It's a good thing. So anyway, check out learms.net. Come on out to the shop. We got cool things happening, boys.
Cool. All right, guys. We'll be back next week. We'll talk to you all then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.